Cora Snyder is a senior researcher at the Pacific Institute, a global nonprofit research organization with a mission to create and advance solutions to the world's most pressing water challenges. It's funny thinking of a global organization because I always think, oh, well, they're just over across the bay. But yeah, they definitely have a global reach. Spent a lot of time in Stockholm recently and with a number of people there. But anyway, Cora leads projects on corporate water stewardship, urban water efficiency, on-site water reuse, and public water policy. The geographic focus in the Western US. Cora holds a master's in environmental science and management from the Bren School at UCSB, and also holds a bachelor's degree in environmental studies, the minor in Spanish from UCSB, and I think joins us from SB, Santa Barbara, right now. Where apparently there's a lot of lichen in the background. So anyway, thanks once again. Cora's been a veteran on water paloozas and has a really interesting topic. And I'll let her grab the screen and get to it.
Great. Thank you so much, Dennis, for the introduction. Yes, it's been a couple years now with Waterpalooza, and I think almost every time a different topic, and I think a new topic this year too. So really excited to share this with you all. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. Great. So hopefully everyone can see that. As Dennis said, my name is Cora. I'm a senior researcher with the Pacific Institute. And today I'm coming to you to share a project that we've been working on for the last couple of years, focused on leak detection for toilets in affordable housing. So I'll talk a little bit just about the Pacific Institute as an organization in case you're not familiar with us. And then I'll start at actually kind of a higher level state framing around the potential for alternative water supplies like water efficiency within California's urban areas. And then use this leak detection project as an example of how to tap into that water efficiency potential, share some of the details about our project and the preliminary results, and then we can open it up to questions. So first, just a little bit about the Pacific Institute. So we're a nonprofit water research organization with the mission to create and advance solutions to the world's most pressing water challenges. So a broad water mandate. As Dennis mentioned, we are a global organization, but based in the Bay Area, so a strong footprint in California for sure. You can see on the slide here, we have 3 key focus areas, which are water and climate equity, nature-based solutions, and water efficiency and reuse. And then I wanted to highlight one initiative in particular. That's our corporate water stewardship initiative that's called the CEO Water Mandate. And that's in partnership with the United Nations. And through that initiative, we work with corporations to help them advance sustainable water management practices and policies. So let's talk a little bit about untapped potential for California's urban water supplies. Hopefully some of you are familiar with or have seen the report that the Pacific Institute put out last year in 2022, looking at the potential for water efficiency, water reuse, and stormwater capture to contribute to California's urban water supply portfolio. And I have this infographic summarizing the results here on the screen, and want to really draw your attention for this presentation to the left-hand side, looking at the water efficiency potential. The headline being that tried and true water efficiency measures could reduce California's urban water demand by 30 to 48%, which is massive. So a lot of potential here to use this, really cost-effective approach of efficiency to help address some of the water scarcity and water reliability challenges that we face here in the state. And I just do also want to recognize that, California has made great progress on water efficiency in the last, 50 or 40 years or so. And so it's not to say that we haven't made incredible gains, but to say that there are additional gains to be made. And this graphic just highlights that, despite growing population and huge economic growth, water use in the state has largely stayed stable or even decreased slightly. So with that, state level background, I want to dive in a little bit to leak detection and specifically toilet leaks. So we know that leaky toilets are a leading source of water waste inside the home. And this is actually regardless of the efficiency of the toilet. So there's been a lot of focus on transitioning to higher efficiency toilets, right? So less water per flush. But the reality is that when a toilet's leaking, it doesn't matter how efficient the flush rate on that toilet is. A leaky toilet is a leaky toilet, and they can all leak the same amount. And just a couple of stats to highlight here that toilets are the main source of indoor water use inside the home, accounting for about 30% of an average home's indoor use. And they tend to be the culprits when it comes to indoor leaks. The EPA estimates that about 1 trillion gallons are lost to household leaks every year, with toilets being one of the key offenders. So now I want to add the other dimension to our project. So we talked about toilets and leaks, and then thinking about this in the context of multifamily housing, which is the focus of our project. And I'll get a little bit more into that in a minute. But I just want to highlight that multifamily properties are a little bit unique when it comes to water and when we think about water efficiency and conservation efforts. And I've highlighted a few reasons why on the slide here. So probably the biggest one is it's hard to can't manage what you can't measure. And with multifamily homes, unless they were built after 2018 in California, most of these buildings are on a single water meter. Maybe they have a separate meter for outdoor irrigation, but all of the homes within a multifamily building are on a single meter. So it's very difficult to disaggregate and understand what consumption looks like from apartment to apartment. It's very difficult to identify leaks, and it's hard to even track the impact of changes that are made in the building. Another key element of multifamily housing is there's a disconnect between who uses the water and who pays for it, right? Typically, the cost of water is not paid for by individual residents, but it instead is wrapped into their rent. And so that means that you have a property owner who's paying for the water, and then you have tenants who are actually using that water. And in fact, you also usually have a layer in between, which are property managers and maintenance teams that are taking the actions that we need to actually save water that could influence water use within the property. So this is often called the split incentive problem, and just can create challenges when it comes to conservation and efficiency and education, right? Residents in multifamily housing don't necessarily have a way to know whether they're using their water efficiently or not. And then the last two, particularly when it comes to thinking about utility conservation programs, multifamily housing often falls in this funny category where sometimes it's considered residential, other times it's considered commercial. And what we find is that conservation messaging and incentive programs are often more focused on single family homes or commercial buildings, and sometimes multifamily can kind of fall through the cracks. So taking these two pieces, right, toilet leaks and the challenges of saving water in multifamily properties, we come to the project that the Pacific Institute is currently leading, which is deploying an innovative toilet leak sensor to help identify and catch and fix toilet leaks in multifamily housing. So I'll talk a little bit about the actual technology that we're using, but first I wanted to start with just a high-level overview of where we're at with this project right now. We started this project in 2020 and had our first installations in 2021, which were in Los Angeles. Since then, the project has expanded considerably to other parts of Los Angeles, to San Francisco, and actually we just launched our first installation in Phoenix, Arizona last week. And so now our portfolio is 11 buildings in Los Angeles and Southern California area, 1 building in San Francisco, and 1 building in Phoenix, Arizona. These are all nonprofit owned affordable housing properties, and you can see on the slide descriptors of the kinds of demographics that these properties serve. And it was really important to us to work with nonprofit affordable housing providers because we can ensure that the cost savings from reducing water use are going back into providing that affordable housing that's so critical in California and other places. So as a total, we have 2,743 sensors installed to date, which is really exciting. It's been great to see this project grow. And I'll talk more later about our preliminary results, but we're estimating about 13 million gallons per year savings from the sensors that we've deployed so far. And I wanted to also note the partners that are involved in this project, because it's a pretty unique mix of folks. So the Pacific Institute has really been the leader on developing and managing the project. And then we're working with Bonneville Environmental Foundation, which is another nonprofit, to help us not only project manage, but also secure funding for this project, which comes primarily from corporations through their corporate water stewardship programs. So I mentioned at the top that Pacific Institute has a whole corporate water stewardship initiative and program through the CEO Water Mandate. And so it's in part through that program and others that we're working with corporations to help fund projects like this. And much of this is also happening through a locally focused corporate water stewardship initiative called the California Water Action Collaborative. So we've talked about the project incubators, the funders. In addition to corporate funding, we're also leveraging performance-based rebates from both Metropolitan Water District and LADWP in the Southern California area. And then finally, we have the project implementers, which are of course critical. So we've been working with Sensor Industries, which is the vendor that provides the sensor. They're based out of Ventura, California, so just up the road from Los Angeles. And then we've worked with a variety of nonprofit housing providers who own these properties, and then the management teams that manage the actual properties, and then the maintenance workers as well. And the management and maintenance workers are the ones that are really dealing with and interacting with this leak detection system every day. So let me tell you a little bit more about how the leak detection system actually works. So this graphic does a pretty good job of explaining it's a Internet of Things, kind of remote sensor technology. I actually have a sensor here. I don't know if it's going to work with my virtual background, but you can see it's about I don't know if you can see it, but it's about like 3 inches long, very simple white device. It screws in on the backside of your toilet between the water supply line and the bottom of the tank. And it's has a little coin cell battery in here that powers it. It connects to a network, not through Wi-Fi, but through a radio network. And you can see here that radio network then goes through the repeaters and the gateway that you see on the graphic. And so a sensor is installed on every single one of the toilets within a given building. Very simple, non-obtrusive, sends data back to an online dashboard that property managers and maintenance teams can then monitor. And the sensor can detect if there's unusual activity or a leak happening within the toilet and can send an alert to the property managers and maintenance teams saying, hey, we're sensing a leak in unit 203. It's wasting about this much water so far. We think it's a stuck open leak, or we think it's a leaky flapper. It can kind of help identify the nature of the leak. And that gives the property managers and maintenance teams real-time information that they can react to save water. And this is particularly important coming back to the challenges of multifamily housing. Finding a leaky toilet in a 100 or 200 unit building, it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. It's so incredibly difficult to identify these silent leaks in multifamily housing in particular. So a little bit more about how this works. I just want to show a snapshot of the dashboard here. So this is just a sample from one of the properties. You can see the bottom line in blue is just regular flush activity. Yellow is flapper leaks and red is stuck open leaks. So you can see over time, the red should go down, right? So the red and orange we want to see decrease over time, while flush rates, the blue baseline, should basically stay the same. And what we find over time is generally when we first install these systems, we're seeing about half of all toilet water use is going to leaks. We want to bring that down, ideally under 10%, maybe even under 5%, so that the majority of water that's going into toilet use is for flushes and not for leaks. I can also just show a quick snapshot here. This is what it looks like if you receive a leak alert, right? So this, work order, it tells you when the work order is open, which is when the leak was detected. So 7:48 p.m. You can see in this case, it took the maintenance team about a week to respond. 6:15 p.m. was when it was closed. You see the initial loss, which is the amount of water that's lost when the sensor picks up the leak. And then you can see the total amount lost over the time that it takes the maintenance team to respond to that work order. So you can see, relatively straightforward, and these things can leak a lot of water over a short period of time. And in this case, right, like the fact that it was left open for a week and wasted, 3,000 gallons is unfortunate, but if we didn't have the system, who knows how long that leak would have gone on for. It could have been another week, another month, and you would have seen this number double, triple, 10x. So with that high-level overview, I want to transition just a little bit in the last couple of minutes to talking about the preliminary results from the project. As I mentioned, we are, on an ongoing basis, continuing to install pilot projects and then monitor the results. So I'll share just an example of some of the preliminary results we're getting so far. At a high level, what we're seeing is that this solution is helping reduce overall building water use in these buildings by about 15%. It can vary depending on the nature of the building and how well it's managed. In some cases, if the property is already really well managed, we see savings closer to 10 or 12%. And in other cases, if a property really hasn't been as actively managed, we'll see 20% or higher savings. So it can vary. And then on the graph here on the left-hand side, I just pulled some examples from just the last 4 months of 2022, looking at a recently installed project. And you can see this was a very large building, almost 1,000 units. And in the span of these 4 months, over 1 million gallons of water were saved through this leak detection. So you can see the water loss to leaks pre-installation versus post-installation dropping way down. And we are monitoring, as I said, continually on a continuous basis to verify, is this 15% average right, and modify it as we go. And we're generally doing 6-month to 1-year study periods on each building, and then after that, doing a continuous kind of check-in monitoring approach. So another great thing about this project is the fact that it can help property managers and maintenance teams in terms of the efficiency of their workflow. We've gotten a lot of great feedback that this solution helps property managers run their buildings more efficiently. This can integrate into their existing work order system and help them not only save water, not only save money on their water bills, but also just manage the building better and more effectively. So I want to play just a short clip, I think it's about 45 seconds. That's an interview with one of the property managers at one of the sites in LA that we installed on.
196 unit building, finding a leaky toilet is like finding a needle in a haystack. These sensors are smart devices that connect to an app and online dashboard. Independent Square property manager Adria Valentine says when a toilet leaks, an alert is immediately sent to her and her maintenance team, identifying which toilet is leaking.
With 196 units, 196 toilets, that's a lot of water on a daily basis with just flushing alone. And so with these sensors being able to tell us if there's a leak, that's going to be amazing to be able to know without the residents telling us or us checking ourselves that there's a leak. And that's going to save a lot of water.
There we go. Just a short clip from Adria there.
196.
And then another perspective I want to bring in is the perspective of the tenants, right? The people who actually live in these buildings, people who are using these toilets on a regular basis. So in some of the installations that we did earlier this year, we actually did a full effort to survey residents as the sensors were getting installed. And I just want to highlight a couple of the key findings from those surveys, which were really that, residents are aware and concerned about California's water issues, right? It's on everybody's radar, especially in LA. And they have a sense of responsibility and agency when it comes to saving water, and they want to get involved. And then what we also asked about is, their perspectives on their building taking actions like this to install leak sensors. And we found that over 80% of residents are happy to know that their building is taking action to save water, and they want to actually know more about what their building managers and maintenance teams are doing to help save water in the building. So I think that this is tenants, especially tenants in affordable housing, are often a group that's not typically engaged in water conservation efforts. And I think the survey helped identify that there is a desire and an interest to involve that stakeholder group. So just to wrap up, this is a quick summary of the project so far. As I mentioned, we've deployed a 11 projects total. In 2021, we had 3 in Southern California. In 2023, we had 8 in LA, 1 in San Francisco, and then that one that just happened last week in Phoenix. And now we're doing ongoing studies to look at the water savings, the water bill savings, how cost effective the project is, and stakeholder perspectives, both from residents, property managers, property owners, and other partners within the project. We're also starting to think about what the next steps are with this work. In addition to just, communicating our findings, also thinking about how we might expand this project, looking for pathways to scale it and fund it in new places and new buildings. And also, toilet leak detection has proven to be extremely effective for multifamily housing, but it's certainly not the only water efficiency intervention that we could be making. So thinking about other options to improve efficiency for multifamily housing as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and close out and see if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Cora. I had to unmute. I'll pop up again. Obviously, Phoenix, well, has a lot of heat issues lately. Certainly be good, water issues among them would be great too. So I'm just looking to see if we had questions. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. There's questions popping up here. Cassandra Matter asks, I'm not sure if it was already mentioned, but is there a cost estimate for implementing these per building or per toilet, I suppose? What has been the installment and operational costs for each project?
Yeah, so I don't have all of those numbers offhand, but I will say that generally speaking, the cost ranges from $300 to $400 per sensor, and that's for a kind of 10-year lifespan estimated.
Okay, yeah, so I see, and so and then the installation looks relatively straightforward, right? I mean,
yeah, so that includes
the money's in the sensor.
As you could see, it's like it's a relatively simple installation. They can usually install about 100 sensors in a day, so it's pretty quick.
And I guess, well, you mentioned these sensors report to kind of a radio, connect to a radio hub. This is more of an IoT solution. What, I don't know if you mentioned this, but how does it, the sensor, because you're working with a specific sensor, I guess it's not like different models, but how do they record, how do they sense, in terms of flow and leakage? Is it acoustical or is it?
So we're going to quickly get out of my technical knowledge about the product, and I'm certainly happy to share information about my sensor industry's contact if people want to follow up, but I know it's not auditory. And I believe like with the sensor, you can actually hear, well, I don't know if you can be able to hear it, but there's like a little piece inside it that gets moved by the water flow. And so it's like somewhat of like a motion sensor. So it's able to detect flow based on whether that piece inside is getting moved by the water. And they can, detect whether it's the flow of a regular flush versus a consistent flow you would see from a leak, and be able to detect leaks that way.
Yeah. Okay. So I see. I'm surprised, that a lot of sensors. I know we have one at our water meter, and it's acoustic, and it does a lot of extrapolation based on acoustic readings, which
I think
boggles one's mind.
For when you need to disaggregate the water data. In this case, we know it's only on one device, so you maybe don't know the auditory nature of it. But if you were having one sensor that's trying to disaggregate across multiple fixtures and devices, maybe then it's better to do auditory.
But even with auditory, I mean, it's interesting how, I mean, say how they're dividing indoor and outdoor usage, or starting even to divide what is, what appliance, whether it's toilets or dishwasher or whatever,
Well, and there's been such a, movement on the smart home, right? Like the smart thermostat, smart lights, everyone's got their, Siri or Alexa. So it's great to see that water is starting to make it into that smart home category.
It is. It's just, I'm just always wonder how they, how they do it from an acoustical position, especially with multiple, say multiple devices or water sources within the home. But I guess that's part of the secret sauce. What are the plans? There's been some expansion. I mean, and you mentioned I guess it's somewhat recent to San Francisco. Are there just even in terms of geographic? I understand this might be more of a national thing as well, but then also just in the West, in your purview, what are the expansion plans?
I think we'll definitely seek to do more work in Southern California. That's been a great place to work so far. We've had good partnerships, and being able to leverage the performance-based rebates from Metropolitan and LADWP has been really beneficial. And there's just so much interest for this kind of work in LA. And I will say one of the big housing owners that we have been working with is the Housing Authority of the City of LA, or HACLA. And
good acronym.
They're one of the biggest housing owners in the entire city. And so we've done pilots with them, but I think there's lots of opportunities for expansion. And we're in conversations with them about that. And so I think LA will definitely be a focus area for us.
I was just thinking, we have when the dust settles on Waterpalooza, or the drops dry, we start thinking about Build-A-Palooza in November, and so it might be something we might want to have you back, even maybe with a panel or something about this, and about just the pilots and the possibilities. As well, because the Build-A-Palooza is about the built environment and housing particularly, and other things like transportation, but water in buildings is obviously no small deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we are actually on time, so I'm going to thank you for presenting, and good to see you. I was just thinking, I don't know if I've seen you with your new name.
Takes some getting
Cora
used.
got married a while ago, so and is I guess based in Santa Barbara now, after spending a lot of her educational time there.
That's right. Well, thanks for the time.
Not a bad place, but obviously keeps you current on water issues, because they don't have a ton of it.
It's true. Santa Barbara is a fun place to think about water.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks once again for a regular Waterpalooza report. And we're not done with the Pacific Institute. I think we have Michael Cohen later, and also Peter Glick tomorrow. But anyway, thanks for leading us off, organizational wise.